All right. Good to go. So let's just outline an overview of what we're doing. And this conversation is geared for competitive performance, right? Or
Yeah.
optimizing performance could be another way. So even if you're like, hey, I'm not going to do competitions, but I do look at the leaderboard every day and I want to be the most fit to maintain my health through time, optimizing performance, this still applies, right? So, people currently in the gym, let's say like Chris, Ripped Chris, right, would be a really good example of, hey, how can we dissect your performance, figure out what the holes are, and then build a game plan from there. Somebody else who's kind of like, hey, I normally do well in the gym, but I want to do really well in the open. So I think of past conversations like Derek Neely would be another good person. Natalie's one. I know you were a really good example, signing up for all the competitions all the time. So that's, I guess, to set the stage, how we want to look at the data of an athlete and then start to build a game plan from it, because it can be, I don't want to say discouraging, but like overwhelming to, I want to compete at that level. I got to get better at everything. It's like, well, maybe that's true, but maybe not. Maybe you need to improve some areas, or what order do I work on things? Like, I'm worse at this, but I'm very close to regional level here. Should I get to regional level there first? Yes or no? And kind of the framework, right?
Yeah, and it's hard to be objective too sometimes when you're looking at yourself by yourself.
Absolutely. Yeah, for sure. That's a really good point. And so with that, let's put in the background of this conversation, we always want to move mechanically perfect first, right? Good form, number one. Full range of motion is number two. Full load is number three. Only when we have those things do we go after intensity. So, that applies to anything. But let's say for deadlift form for you, we're totally fine. We're good there. We can get full range of motion. So we can go to a heavy load and then we can move that load quickly. If we look at your ring muscle ups, you have the strength, which I would say is the load component, but not the technique component first. So we would want to start there, right?
Right.
So all that being said, let me share my screen. If you can let me know that you can see that, it should be on now a spreadsheet. Yes?
Yeah, you're at it.
Perfect. And it looks much prettier than last time, right? Awesome.
A lot prettier.
Okay. Let's gonna black that out for a second. It'll be distracting. Okay. So let's walk through this whole thing and kind of build the chart. So the work that's been done, this stuff has been pre-filled, save one, and we'll talk about it when we get to that. Okay. But in building this for you, right, Sydney, we said, let's be competitive at WODAPALOZA for the intermediate women, right? So not elite, not RX, the intermediate, but not scaled either, right? So what we did is take the top 5 of those ladies just found here. So we've got Jackie, Nina, Hannah, Henrique, and Sophie is one person, not two, right? So the list across the top. And so want to fill in this stuff, right? So we've got, fortunately, a ton of data, but I want to walk through for everybody where we got this data and how we're using it to then start to figure out conclusions, right? So we've got 3 workouts from WODAPALOZA because there's good data there and you can replicate it, right? So with that, we're going to go look at the Bayside chipper for Sophie. So if we look here, Bayside, was it the Bayside chipper? I thought I had that. Yeah, Bayside chipper. Okay.
Yeah.
Cool. So here's WODAPALOZA leaderboard, Bayside chipper, 7 minutes, 37 seconds. I'm not going to add milliseconds in there. So if we enter this 7:37, boom, and that gives us those 5 ladies and the average of them, right? Now, fortunately, it's not like there was somebody who was ultra dominant across all of them, but this is the average of the top 5 finishers, which means you will be competitive, right? And that's our goal, not to get to WODAPALOZA, but to be competitive there. So that's why we're looking at these 5, right?
Yeah.
So we've got those. Then we've got open history. So just a Google search from here, and we can pull up the open results real quick. And actually, this is just so everybody can see, this is the quarterfinals. And I know we need that number. So 448. I'm just hopping down around here. So 448 there. And that's the last quarter finals. And then let's go search for, just show everybody how we would get, you know, from the data that's available. Where is Anna Sophie for 22.3? So just go back to the CrossFit Games leaderboard, and I want to go into the open for women of 22. And of course, RX, she pops right up. Great. And so we've got her 3 scores, and this last one that we want is 717. So I'm going to pop that in here. 717. Okay. So before we go on to everything else, some assumptions that everybody needs to know about for this data set. And this is only 5 other people, but it's pretty complete data. We can get more. We could go back to 21 if we really cared, but I would say it's not as relevant as what is our training target, and then where are we deficient, and we'll start to triage those things, right?
Right.
So on here, if we look through, there are some things that are just a score or total weight, right?
Yeah.
So this quarterfinal workout number 4, Henrique did not qualify, but she's part of that top 5. So I just put these time caps in, and I'm leaving this blank because I don't want to assume that 0 or 1,000, it'll mess up the averages. So
Right.
it's just a smaller data set. But then if we look at other stuff, so if we go and Sydney on here, just so you see what I did, you had the 124, I think it was, for the barbell complex, but scaled. So I just put it at the time cap and then noted that it was scaled instead of the notes, so we get like a clean idea of what to do, right? So
Yeah. I figured that's what you did.
yeah. And same thing here for Henrique, since we did not have the quarterfinal workouts. Like, she didn't make the quarterfinals, so had she done them, she'd be time capped, right? But even up here in the open, so we've got like this workout in particular, and we'll talk about this as a really good piece of data to have, but 3 of 5 hit the time cap in an open workout. So
Yeah.
okay, cool. Let's start digging into what this means, right? Gonna go back here and we'll unhide this. So reset. Cool. There we go. So if something says on, and I guess let's work over to that. So we've got the average of those ladies, what Sydney did over here, right? And then the difference. The difference is nice, but we don't know if 2 minutes and 56 seconds, like if that's a marathon, that's a lot different than if this is Fran, right? So what percentage of difference is that, right? That's really important. And so if you see 100%, it means that we have no data for you yet. And I know you're working on those. We'll get those tests in. But let's kind of look through some of these things and what's interesting about them, right? Then we can start to look at where should you start to train. We won't really have a perfect idea until we've got the rest of these results, but we've got enough to start talking about, right?
Right.
So this first one, 22.2, I don't remember the workout, so let's go look it up. But what I see here, go ahead.
burpee one. It's the ascending ladder because I remember that one. It's the ascending. It's 1 through 10, and then 10 to 1 of the burpees and the deadlifts.
Burpee and deadlift. Okay, cool.
85, something like that. I don't remember the weight.
Yeah, do you mind if we pull it up? I just want to
Yeah.
have everybody have the same opportunity to look at what it is. So for this, let's look at women. Okay, so we've got deadlifts, bar facing burpees at 155. And for you, that is not a hard load, but combine these two movements are hard. And we see that being hard for the field of, if we look at the elite category, I think this would be a little different, but for our current target, this is a hard workout, right? You hit the time cap, but so did almost everybody else. You're off by 9 seconds because the people that finished, barely finished.
Yeah.
And so what we can see is, hey, you have a difference of under 2% on the results here.
Yeah.
Needs to be in maintenance mode, right? Like really deadlifting while you breathe hard isn't something that Sydney needs to work on right now. Does that make sense?
Mm-hmm.
Now let's bump up here just because you and I know the background of this a little bit better, but compared to these ladies, so we hit the time cap here, but on the particular day we tested, you had to scale it because you couldn't do the weight, right? And so this 142% behind is actually bigger than that. We know that, right?
Right.
So what this sort of tells me is that raw strength for you, Sydney, is not the issue.
Yeah.
As a complete picture, but technical fast movements when you're breathing hard is currently a deficiency, right?
Yeah.
So of the data we have, like, okay, this is something to really work on, is moving heavy weight in Oli lifts, right?
Yeah.
So if we go back to that order of operations, we got to do it correctly first, full range of motion. And so when we look at Olympic lifts, that's being good at the hang clean, a hang squat clean, hang power clean, a power clean, all those things. And the order of operations for like, what if they dictate a split jerk versus a push jerk? Like, am I confident in those modalities?
The overhead stuff I am.
Yeah. So, but we got to get there, right? So this potentially is going to be one of the priorities, is only lifting. And so fortunately you have the coach's background to know that, okay, this starts with, I do the Bergner warm up correctly, including all the pieces first. And then I'm gonna only practice 80% or above of 1 rep max weight. And then we can look at maybe periodization, cycling. But with that sort of a difference, it doesn't tell me yet that we need to work on anything like super fancy or sexy. It's just more volume of the correct things, right? So let's get the basics, let's get stronger, more confident on that. And now we don't know if that's going to be the biggest hole here. Maybe there's a negative 300, maybe you get a 0 down here, or maybe that's the biggest hole, right? We don't know yet, but it's a good talking point.
Yeah.
And if we bump down to, I don't remember this quarterfinal workout.
It was 30 calories on the rower, 20 burpee box jump overs at 20 inches, and then 10 power snatches at 135.
Okay, and I'm gonna pull it up here again.
Yeah, and 135 is my 1 rep max right now for snatching, so I kind of knew that was gonna be
okay. Yeah. And okay, so just so everybody sees it right for time, this is what we're looking at. 30 cal row, 20 box jump, burpee box jump overs, 10 snatches. Cool. And so if we then compare you to these peers, right? This 7 minutes, again, with an asterisk, right? But we can, I think, safely assume that that's good because Henrique just didn't qualify, right? So it was a hard workout, but the average of the field is a minute and a half faster, 26% more. And so this is, I think, where the coach comes in of like, well, is it because, as you said, this weight is significant? And so it means by the time you get here, you're barely on singles, or was it getting there? Was that the hard part? Is it the engine, or is it the cycling on burpees and understanding the pace here? So a few different things to tackle, right? And then I want to bounce up here to the other good data point that we have. Ooh, that's Sydney jumping around. Okay. So what was 22.3?
That was the one with the thrusters, and it went from pull-ups all the way up to muscle-ups.
Okay. And again, just like we did for everything, let's pull it up so everybody can follow along. And so on this one, basically it's a skill ladder, right? It gets heavier and it gets harder. So pull-ups, double unders, thrusters, chest to bar pull-ups, double unders, a heavier thruster, but less, and then bar muscle ups, double unders, the heaviest thruster. So on there, and going back to this is something we know as well, that right here, the double unders in this instance is a weed out movement. And that's something that, like, yeah, we need the skill. We need that. And then also, Sydney, just knowing you, right? Thrusters are not the issue in this workout, especially after doing the 2-rep max yesterday. We know that.
Yeah.
The pull-ups, I think, are fine. Maybe they're a little more taxing or not, but the priority would be, let's fix the weed out movements, right? Let's be really competent at double unders for this level. That looks like, and this is again where coaching knowledge comes in. That would look like, can I cold get through 100 unbroken? And that feels, like a workout, but isn't unreasonable to do kind of in a warm-up situation as 100 double unders, right? Then we can kind of lick that skill, cross it off the board. Very rarely will you see more than 100 in a workout. So,
Right.
or at least in a row, right?
Yeah.
So that's, obviously we've talked previous to this, but your homework is to fill some of these in, and then we can sit back through and dissect, where do we prioritize our efforts, right? And
I feel like the open ones, I might redo those just to kind of see where I'm at. Not the 22.2, I feel like is pretty, I don't know. I mean, probably could get a little bit better because my engine's better.
yeah.
But like, I know my double unders have gotten better, and then same with like wall walks and stuff like that.
Mm-hmm.
I definitely feel like I could have, it still is going to probably be like less than these girls, but probably less of a difference.
Sure. And I mean, that's a really good way and a good point you bring up of, so I know like that first one, you were recovering from kind of the adjustment in altitude. I think it was like the second day you were up here.
The I was in California, but that was like the night before I moved. So I'd been sleeping on like an air mattress, I think, for like a week and a half.
Sure.
Yeah.
And so doing that retest can certainly show progress.
Yeah.
And I would say something to be careful of on, hey, let me retest is like, have we made enough progress on what we need to work on before we retest the whole suite, right? So
Right.
if, okay, hey, I think it'd be much better here. Yes, I agree. But also, let's say if we look at the Oli lifting and the double unders and the muscle ups, right? We fix those holes. My guess is your deadlift probably improves too. Your engine for burpees probably improves too. So
Right.
very rarely in CrossFit are we going to get to a point where working towards our weaknesses makes us worse somewhere else. They'll either maintain or slightly improve, which is a huge benefit. but
Right.
something that I think is often overlooked, right? It's, oh, I'm going to go after and make sure I'm really good at these things. And like, you just can't win competitions or have well-rounded performance and health in our world if you continue to build up your strengths. It's make sure they're on par with everything else, and then you enjoy working on them, so you will. But yeah, does that help kind of round out what we built Monday together to then
Yeah.
the roadmap of what we're going to target going on?
Yeah, I think so.
Cool. So we've discussed your homework, and then just to whoever watches this all the way through, we're now 25 minutes in. The point of going through that whole exercise is if, and this is not everybody in the gym, right? But somebody who comes to us and says, I want to work on my optimum performance or competitive stance, here's how we're going to approach it, right? And this helps on a few different ways. We target the correct things, not what we believe are the correct things, but also it helps you to reframe. And let's go back to Sydney, you're strong. Your slow lifts are amazing. And you're typically the strongest woman in the gym at slow lifts.
Yeah.
But if we compare you to what you want to be competitive with, sometimes it's easy to just be best in the gym and not reframe of, yeah, but that's not actually my goal.
Right.
So redoing this helps to calibrate that correctly as well.
Yeah. Because I'm like, I know I'm like strong, but there's people that are just as strong and are stronger. So
Yep. Yeah. And then it gets even eviler because they're just as strong or stronger and way faster or whatever, right? And they don't have holes in skills. And but like we started with, that can be really overwhelming to, I have all these things. Where do I start? And this gives us a good roadmap for that.
yeah.
Well, cool. So from this, just people who have made it this far, if this is helpful to you and in line with what your goals are, I'll leave a link in this post of where you can schedule a one-on-one meeting to get a coach that works with you each week towards your goals. But part of that is one-on-one in person. But another part of that is going to be driving your programming of extra homework. Where do you need to focus? Where should you put in the extra hours and energy? And that's the purpose of having a coach, right? So programming is out there and totally free. I would say is a true statement. But let's say you think you need Proven's programming or Mayhem or somebody else, like it's a $50 wall. So it's very cheap compared to that knowledge and experience, but implementing it is the hard part, not just working on it. And so it's, in Sydney's case, something we talk about on a weekly basis of what should I be doing given the plan of Mayhem? Should I skip this? Should I do more of this, etc.? So that's kind of the point of all of this. And I think that's my ending point. Sydney, do you have anything you want to add that would help people kind of thinking about, should I work one-on-one with a coach on the performance side?
Yeah, I mean, I feel like I have like a kind of cool perspective because I'm also a coach. But I also tell people like when it comes to me, like I know personally, like I can be objective as I can, like what we're kind of speaking of earlier, but it's hard to really kind of step back and have you look at yourself, and it's a lot easier to have somebody else do that. And like
No.
it's good to have a fresh set of eyes. So especially if like you're stuck on something or like you said, you want to start competing or you want a specific skill or just to do better overall, I feel like it's really beneficial because you have that person to make something that's more specific for you. Whereas like that general programming is great and like maybe you do some extra stuff on your own, but it's only going to get you so far until like you actually identify what you need to like specifically work on as like a true individual instead of like more of like a general population, if that makes sense.
Yeah. Awesome. Really well said. And I'll link an example of what we went through with Sydney, as well as where we found the resources. So if you wanted to look at it on your own, great. And we'll do another example of this. So maybe somebody who's struggling with body composition, weight loss, or somebody who's struggling with joint health or longevity, right? This is not the only focus or the only reason to work with the coach, but it's one that makes sense right now because it's Sydney's road. So wanted to share it with everybody. All right. Thank you, Sydney.
Thank you.
See you later.
See you later.